Okay, here we go, back again. And, right, I've done a bit of a testing. Hopefully everything's working as it's supposed to be. Welcome. I am today talking about the problem of evil in a bit more depth. I've spoken about it before multiple times. It's not really something that massively interested in talking about, but it's a big one. So I'm going to really try and cover it in depth as much as possible. But here I am. I'm not scripted. I'm trying to remember everything I need to say and go along with it. So I don't know how long this is going to take, and hopefully I don't forget to say anything that I need to say. But let's go. So, the problem of evil. We all know the basic structure of it. God exists, and bad things happen to good people. Why is that? So, therefore, God doesn't exist. That's a very sort of layman's way of putting it. I'm going to look at it more academically in a moment. But first, well, as this is a argument for atheism, I think it's important to define atheism, particularly the way I and a lot of other people use it. So my definition of atheism is agreement with the statement there is no such thing as God or gods. Now, I know a lot of people disagree with that, but I just want to stay straight up the front. That's the way I use the word. So when you hear me say it, please take that definition and not try to enforce your definition onto it. Because I know there are different people that use it in different ways. There's a different position I would call agnostic non-theism, which I would say is somebody who's kind of on the fence. They don't believe, but they also don't not believe. They haven't made a decision. They don't know enough. They could go either way. Or there's also a hard agnostic, which is different, which would be someone who thinks you can never know. But yeah, I differentiate agnostic non-theist from atheist because I think there is a distinction. There's a distinction there. There's the I don't know position, and I don't believe either way position, and the I tend to lean towards I think it's not true situation. So there is a difference, and a lot of people seem to want to lump those two positions together, even though they're quite different. But if you do that, that's up to you. I just want to be clear with the way I'm using the word for clarity. So atheism is shorthand for people who would state, I think there is no such thing as gods. And I'm not the only one who thinks this. You may have heard of Graham Oppy, a few of the credentials there. He's one of the leading defenders of atheism nowadays, and just thought it'd be a good idea to show you his definition.
Yes.
Okay, so, well, it'll sound slightly provocative because we don't have the context here. So I think that properly we should define theism as the view that there's at least one God, and atheism is the view that there are no gods, and monotheism then as the view there's exactly one God, and we call that one God with a capital G. Atheists then are people who believe that there are no gods. And in particular, in our context, they believe that God doesn't exist. That's what an atheist is. There are other possibilities. There are agnostics, people who suspend judgment, so they believe neither that God exists nor that God does not exist. And there are innocents, people who, for whatever reason, don't have the concepts to formulate the proposition, so they just have no attitude towards it. So there's a kind of fourfold distinction. Other people like to say that atheism is just lacking the belief that God exists, which lumps together agnostics in the class of agnostics, right, with the class of atheists, if you define it that way, which I don't like. So I think that I think that the right thing to say about atheists, the right way, no, that's not the right thing to say. People use the words differently. I think that it works very neatly if you choose to use the terms the way I do, but not everybody will. But what I mean when I'm talking about atheists is people who say that God does not exist.
Every agnostic I met thought that atheists.
You know what? I just turned off the mic for myself there, so you didn't hear what I said. But what I did say was that that I said exactly what Oppie said, and his Bart Ehrman and his view of what an atheist is. So, sorry, I'm going to switch the mic off and. Actually, I think I'll just keep quiet because I'll probably forget to turn it back on again. Here we go. This is the trouble with the unscripted, unedited. I would have caught this mistake and it wouldn't have happened. But this is how it is.
Every agnostic I met thought that atheists were simply arrogant agnostics. And every atheist thought that every agnostic was simply a wimpy atheist. 2 degrees of the same thing. Well, someone will just say, I don't know, the other will admit they do know. And so that was I have come to think that in fact, they are not 2 degrees of the same thing, they're 2 different kinds of thing. That agnosticism has to do with epistemology. What you know. What you know. And atheism has to do with belief, what you believe. I actually consider myself to be both an agnostic and an atheist. I'm an agnostic because if somebody says to me, is there a greater power in the universe? My response is, how the hell would I know? I don't know, so I'm an agnostic. If somebody were to ask me, do you believe in the God of the Bible? Do you believe in a God who interacts with the world, who intervenes in the world, who answers prayer? Do you believe in a supernatural divine being? No, I don't believe it. So I don't believe it, so I'm an atheist. But I don't know, so I'm an agnostic. And since I'm a scholar, I prefer to emphasize knowledge rather than belief. And so I tend to identify as an agnostic.
Has your
I did turn the mic off there because I thought it might have been echoing or something, so I thought best just keep it in mind that I need to switch that back on. But there we go, you have Bart Ehrman saying the same thing, and I can already predict that, oh no, he's saying they don't believe. That just, that means that he's rejecting the belief. So I did look for a clarification. If I just pop this up, this is from his blog. It's him again saying the same kind of thing, but with the, I can see it there. Maybe I can maximize that a little bit. I don't think there is a divine being who is sovereign over all that. So I don't think there is. He's making that positive statement there. It's not a lack of belief, which I think I think he would accept that bundling, but he's saying for himself, he will say he's an atheist when he's making that claim. So this again, not a straw man position. This is a valid definition of the term. I'm going to close those down. So atheists use it, theists use it, people use it. If you don't use it, that's your thing. But just coming out of the gate, in philosophy, it's important to define your terms so that you know what the person is saying when they're speaking, because there can be situations like this where I'll use a word and you might generally use that word differently. So when I say the word, you hear your meaning and you don't hear my meaning. So this is why I'm coming out of it this at the beginning, saying this is how I use the word, so that you can keep in mind that. Okay. So it's very strange that sometimes you get accused of strawmanning the position by using the word in the way that you mean the word when it's a valid definition. And it used to be that was the only definition. This kind of lack belief is quite a modern one. Also, I mean, if you go back thousands of years, atheists could just... Romans would have called Christians atheists because we only have one God rather than a pantheon. So the definition does change, and that's fine. Language evolves, but that's why defining terms is very important. And I spent way too much time on defining atheism when the point I want to make about defining atheism is that the problem of evil, if I can pop that up now, let's get that in. So this doesn't get you to atheism. It's not actually an argument for atheism. It could be an argument that gets you to agnostic non-theism if it's successful, but it doesn't get you to atheism. It doesn't get you to the statement or the claim there is no such thing as God, or God's big G or small g. It doesn't get you there. This, in the premise, the first premise there, because as syllogisms work, you take the premises, and it's like doing maths with words. If you premise 1 and premise 2 come together to make the conclusion, and the maths of the words is correct, then the conclusion is also correct. Premise 1 there is talking about a very particular definition, and he uses a small g, and that's fine. And then the conclusion here, has a big G in it for some reason. That would probably be just me having a typing error. I wonder if I can change that on the fly. Can I fix that? Let's make that one a small g. Oh, I did it, hooray. I love this software. Alright, so yeah. You've got this particular definition of God here: omnipotent, omniscient, and omnibenevolent. One of them. And if this is successful, the conclusion says that this particular definition of God does not exist. So it doesn't have any effect on a God of deism, which is just a God who creates, and then maybe they sit back and watch, or maybe they just go off and create another universe and don't even watch. You know, they're quite disinterested. They don't have a personal relationship with us. They create, and then whatever they do next, we don't know, because we don't have any interaction. This doesn't affect an evil God, a God who creates for the purpose of doing evil, because this God in this definition is omnibenevolent. Why can't I say that word? I'm going to say all-loving. This God is all-loving, and an evil God is not. So this argument doesn't do anything against that. So it can't get you to atheism, because there are no such thing as God or gods. Would include evil God, would include deist God, would include pantheist God, any of those. But this doesn't apply to that. So when people say this is the strongest argument for atheism, it's funny because it doesn't get you there. Maybe they're talking about agnostic non-theism. Maybe it's a good argument to get you to there, and that's fine, because yeah, okay, sure, maybe it is. But yeah, when it doesn't actually touch on a whole range of possibilities, then it's not that strong, is it? So yeah, I was talking about the small g, big G God. Because philosophically speaking, they are sort of separate things. A small g could be something like Thor or Zeus or whoever, and we know, according to the mythology, is Zeus son of Kronos, and Kronos was the son of Gaia, and Gaia was created by chaos. So you've got this sort of family tree going on. Zeus is like way down; he's got grandparents, whereas Big G God is more, has got a more solid philosophical definition of being something like the prime mover, if you've heard that term, the uncaused cause. So which basically means the spiritual mind or entity that was, it's eternal. At one point it was the only thing that existed, and from it all other things have come from. It's like the foundation of existence, foundation of reality, and that's something that Thor could never claim to be, because he's got grandparents. He was born, created. He's lower down on the hierarchy, the family tree. It's whoever's at the top of that family tree. So chaos in the Greek mythology has a more relationship, because it's at the top. There's nothing. Chaos didn't come from. Chaos just existed, and it's non-material, non-spatial. So it's got a lot more in common with Big G God. A lot more in common with Yahweh, and we could potentially see that as like the same entity being described by different cultural groups, which there's some parallels there with the way the story, Christian God created angels and demons and so on, that were like sort of divine beings but lower on the hierarchy, and so that kind of fits with this idea that chaos made Gaia and Uranus and Kronos and Zeus, and it's like they're lower than him on the pecking order. So there's kind of parallels. They're not exact matches, but it's like, okay, they're sort of painting the same picture from different angles, and that makes sense. But we're talking about this God at the top. So the Christian God's got certain attributes. Like, so the premise one here would fit the Christian God to a point. It might not fit chaos. Chaos probably doesn't get described with these things, but maybe because the God of the Bible has revealed himself more through Scripture, through his chosen people, whereas the Greek pantheon, it's this idea that the fallen angels, the demons, they decided to rebel, and they made their own little society, and they've got their own followings, and that kind of went on over there. So they were like, no, forget the big guy. We're kings now. We're in charge now. I'm getting off topic here, and that's the danger of not having a script. But anyway, what I'm trying to say here is there are different definitions of God, and so when a Christian talks about certain arguments from like cosmology and so on, they might just be talking about the most basic definition of, the uncaused cause, the creator, and that those type of arguments would work for things like deism and evil God and so on. But then when you get more some certain other things, like arguments from prophecy or from Jesus and so on, that's more specifically Christian. So you have this cumulative case where it's kind of lots of things that build on top of each other. So but the problem of evil is only knocking down, if it was successful, perhaps it would take away the Christian aspect, but it wouldn't leave the more general philosophical idea of the prime mover, So let's have a look at this. Okay, so we've got these omni attributes, as we might call them. One of them I can't say for some whatever reason. This stuff is delicious. Rubicon mango. It's made with real fruit juice. Delightful. But there's fizzy too, so there's a chance of belching. Right. Omnipotent, omnipotent, for example. This means all-powerful. Okay. Omniscient means all-knowing, and omnibenevolent, all-loving. I've already defined that one. It's all-loving, and I have no idea why I can't say it. Maybe I'm speaking too quickly. Omnibenevolent. If I make that noise, I'm probably trying to say that word. That's how we're going with it. Right. So, these three things, you could say, they describe the Christian God. But we have to be careful. Let's start with omnipotent, because this one comes up a lot. So it means all-powerful, capable of doing all things. And so some people take that too far. So they come back with, the classic one is, can he create a rock so big that he can't lift it? And you go, if you say yes he can, then that means he can't lift a rock, and that means he's not all-powerful because there's a rock he can't lift. But if you say he can't do it, then that means he can't create the rock. So that's also a thing he can't do. So he can't be all powerful because he can't create this rock. Either way, you lose. It's like, no. Because the thing about omnipotence is that, yes, it's all powerful, but it still has to be logically possible. You can't create things like another classic example, a square circle. A square is a shape with 4 parallel sides, 4 equal right angles, 4 sides equal length, and a circle is one line or you could say it's many infinite lines that all connect with a diameter or circumference. So they're two fundamentally different things that cannot be put together, no matter how you try. It's just impossible. So God could not create a square circle. It's just impossible. So the rock he can't lift. He can't not do it because he isn't all powerful. He can't not do it because it's just not a logical possibility, and that's not failing on his part. That's just basic logic. All-knowing, yeah, that's fine. He created everything so he can know everything. That one's fine. I don't think we have any issues with that. Some Christians do. Some people think, I believe it's called open theism, where God doesn't really know the future. He can predict things by being clever and work things out, but he doesn't actually know the future. Whereas I believe the Bible teaches he knows the future as if it were the past or the present. So omniscience, fine. All loving, also, yes, good. But there is a proviso, which I shall bring up here with this lovely image. Okay, so the problem of evil is using 3 of God's attributes, but he's not painting the entire picture. Okay, so the Christian teaching is that God is he has a perfect balance of love, wrath, mercy, and justice. So obviously love comes under the all-loving, but all these other things have factors in that too. With him being a perfect being, all good, that means he's got to do something about evil. So that's where the wrath comes in. He has to get rid of evil. He has to do something about it. And this is kind of what the problem of evil wants to say as well. So, if he's all loving, why isn't he getting rid of the evil? He should be getting rid of the evil. There shouldn't be any evil around here. And that's the point. But you've got to bring in mercy and justice. And obviously mercy comes into it with love. He loves us, so we all make mistakes. We all do evil things. We all do things that are wrong. There's no denying that. Everyone has, told a lie. Everyone has maybe stolen something, whether it's just even online, downloading a movie or whatever. Everyone's done something. So he's not just going to go straight in and destroy everybody off the bat, is he? He's going to have some mercy and be like understanding that, this is not another Christian teaching, is that there's all these rules to abide by, but he knows that there are too many, or that they're too hard, and we have too much temptation, and we're not going to keep them all perfectly. So he's merciful and patient, and waits. But there's still got to be justice. There's still got to be justice. You can't just have the forgiveness without some justice involved. So if you I don't know, if you're the people pleasing type of person who just keeps forgiving people, you know that they just walk all over you. You could just keep letting them get away with it. They'll keep doing it. So you have to kind of let them know that they've done wrong. And if someone says the words "I'm sorry," that can be entirely empty. They can say the words "I'm sorry," but that doesn't necessarily mean that they mean it. So this idea of repentance is someone means it. If to repent means you mean it and you want to change your ways and probably even try to repair the damage you've done by being wrong. So God's love is all of these things together. It's not just the idea painted in The Problem of Evil of that he loves us all and he wants to cuddle us all in a big safety blanket, and it doesn't matter if you did something wrong, I'll pat you on the head and just tell you not to do it again. Oh, you did it again, you cheeky sausage. It's not that. There's more layers to it and more wisdom to it than The Problem of Evil gives you. It's too simplistic. So coming back to this, we've got this idea that there's a contradiction between a God who is all-powerful, all-knowing, and all good, and the existence of evil. So like I said, if you think it's like, he's all loving and he wants to protect us, so he's just going to delete all the evil. A major problem with that is that he'll just have to delete the human race. Just, he's going to start, if that's what we're going to do, he's just like, okay, wipe it clean. And then people don't like that. People don't like the story of Noah. People don't like the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. They don't like it when he does that. Although in those situations, those were good examples of his mercy, because if you read the story properly, it tells you like they had hundreds of years of warning saying, you got to change your ways, you got to do better, or I'm going to get fed up, I'm going to have enough. And then they didn't, they kept, and it got to the point where they were irredeemable, they weren't going to change, they weren't going to do better, and that's when the wrath kicked in. So it's like I said, there's these layers, this balance to it all. So here you've got this contradiction. You want to say there's God and there's evil, they don't go together. That's what you want to say. But you're an atheist. Your worldview, your system, your naturalism, whether it's naturalism, materialism, whatever, doesn't have God in it and doesn't have evil in it. Doesn't have either. So you're saying in this with this argument, these two things can't go together. Our system has neither. So we're fine. There's no contradiction because we haven't got either. But for you got to lose. You got to lose one of these. So let's take out God, and we'll have evil. You've got evil in your system now, but there's no God. But that to me seems like a completely arbitrary choice. Why do that? Why do that? You could just say, okay, maybe evil's not real. Maybe evil is just someone's opinions. Maybe it's just all opinions. You still have God in the system, but evil, and that works, because you can have that with deism. You can have that with all sorts of systems. Like you still have God, and evil can be just a subjective opinion and not a real thing. And it's bizarre. It's because when you go to like, this argument proves atheism, which takes both away. There's a real problem there, because you wanted to posit your premise 2. You want to say premise 2 is true. There is evil in the world. You have to have that. You have to be able to offer that to be able to say we would take away the other one. Okay. If you don't have that, then we can just you can't prove your premise 2. You can't do it. We're saying they both exist, so it's kind of, maybe it's on us to say they both exist, but you can't show us it does, because atheism has no objective moral values, and I've explained that in other places, but the basic thrust of it is, the whole universe is one day going to die, and if it does, then how could there possibly be any point to anything? You can have subjective points, subjective meaning, subjective value between two people, like, yes, this other person is important to me, therefore I want to look after them. You can have all of that, and you can have a goal of, okay, I've got a family, I want to look after my family, that's my moral, they're valuable to me, and there can be the objectively best ways to look after my family, but there's no objective value to the family in that system. So you can compare it to like games like chess or basketball or whatever. The game has rules, and if you follow using the rules, there might be the best tactics, the best ways, the best things to do, the best plays to win the game, but that game was invented by a human, and they didn't have to invent the rules that way. And there are other games that exist, and who's to say that basketball or chess is better, so that's how morality is on atheism in brief. But with Christianity, moral values are certain things are right and certain things are wrong, and we can debate it, but there will be a right answer at the end of it, whether we know it or not. Even if 100% of the population are wrong about something, there is still a right answer, and it could be that we're all wrong about it. And that's sort of getting into the moral argument here. So one of the arguments for God's existence is the moral argument, which I have good to go somewhere up in here. See that premise too there? Objective moral values do exist. Is pretty much the same thing as the premise 2 in the other one, that evil exists. So it's the same premise in both arguments, but in one of the arguments, the atheist wants to say, hey, evil exists, but they've got no way of saying that. Theism can say that, and so the moral argument works. And if you want to put forward the problem of evil as an argument, basically you're just giving us one of the premises in the moral argument for free. You're basically giving us the moral argument. If you put forward the problem of evil, you're basically proving that God exists, and it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing for atheism. It's embarrassing for agnosticism. Whoever you are, it just doesn't work for you. So generally, the response to that then, from the atheist side or the agnostic side or whoever you are, is, oh no, not that one, although that's relevant. No, this isn't about atheism. This is an internal critique of Christianity, because you guys are saying these things. You guys are saying God exists, and you're saying evil exists, and that means your worldview has a contradiction in it, and that means if you've got a worldview with a contradiction in it, then your worldview can't be true. So let's just throw the whole thing out. Which, that's, throw the baby out with the bathwater, I think is the phrase. You don't throw a whole theory out just because there's a problem with it. You can just tweak it sometimes, or maybe you can lose a part of the theory. It's not necessarily a case of you just, okay, the whole thing's nonsense. So yeah, that doesn't work. Well, we're going to look at why it doesn't work, because the situation is what you want to say here. Okay, we're talking about Christianity, atheism, alternatives aren't relevant to the argument here. We're just talking about the internal inconsistency within the Christian worldview, and the problem with that is that the internal inconsistency is not there. If you read the Bible at all, it tells you both of these things. We expect both of these things, very much so. Jesus on the cross, that's the center of Christianity. Jesus himself, sinless, perfect, wholly good, had the worst, most humiliating torture and execution they could think of. Bad things happening to good people. It's right at the center of the story. Do you think we're going to be surprised by that? The book of Job, a very famous book. Everyone's vaguely familiar with the story, at least. That is all about this. God exists, and bad things happen to good people. Job is like described as being a good guy, follows God generally, and he's doing all right in his life, having a great time. And Satan comes to visit God and goes, "Hey, this guy Job, he only worships you because he's having a great time. He thinks like, oh, he's got a beautiful wife, he's got a big family, he's got riches. So he praises you all the time for all the blessings you've given him." And God says, "No, that's not why he praises me. That's not why we're on the same team. That's not why I like him. That's not why he likes me." And so it's like, nah, if you took all that stuff away, he would lose it with you. And God's like, "No, don't think so. I don't think so, Satan." So Satan generally has permission to do things in the world at the time. So Satan goes after Job, makes him ill, makes him lose his family, lose all his riches, kind of destroys his life. Satan does it. Satan does this. Quite often you get people saying, "Oh, why did God kill Job's family?" It's like, we didn't. He didn't. Satan did that. He just didn't. It's not in there. You got to read the book. Read the book. So Satan does that, and it's just so that you get this whole thing. Job, if you read the book, Job gets really depressed. He's like, why is this happening? Why is this? It's like he's suicidal. He's like, he's so upset about everything, but he never stops sort of, being on God's side. He never stops. He never loses his faith. He's very upset, and he starts questioning things, but that's okay. He has a couple of friends come along, and his friends start trying to explain what could be going. So, "Oh, you must have really sinned really badly, and this is your punishment." But it's not that, and they go through all these things, these general like, "Oh, this is punishment for something generally." But then the last guy to speak is the youngest, and he's not the other guys are supposed to be these kind of really smart guys, really like philosophers, and the other guy is just like the guy taking notes, and he's the youngest, and he's actually the one that speaks up and speaks some sense and says, "Well, what are you all talking about? This isn't right." And he has a bit of a speech saying like, how can you know any of that, and then finally God comes in himself, and he explains things in his way. So yeah, it's a really, and finally at the end, happy ending. Job gets it. He understands it, and in the end he gets even more wealthy and an even bigger family, and his life's even better because he kept the faith. So that's all in the Bible. It's all to be expected. It's all so this idea of an internal consistency is just not there. You just have to try and find out okay, how is this not inconsistent? And the Bible explains it, and philosophy's explained it as well. And I've said this before. It's been said many times by many people. This argument, as it stands, as I'm showing it here now, and I've been talking about it for however long, the people at the top of the game don't use this argument anymore. They understand this is trash. It's worthless, because it's based on the idea that there is a contradiction between God, a loving God, and the existence of evil. And all you have to do is to show one possible reason how they could coexist. Because a contradiction is something like X exists and X does not exist at the same time. that's a contradiction, or X is and X isn't at the same time. And this is not that. This is two things which, they want to say loving God, evil, square and circle, don't work. That's what they want to say. But if there are compatible properties, if they can meld in some way, any possible way, that's not a contradiction. You can't call it one, and this whole argument falls apart. So there are a few ways, and only one of them has to work. They don't all have to work. Only one of them has to work, or I think it's a combination of all of them. Some work in some situations and some work in others. And I'm going to try and go through a few of them. There's probably more that I've forgotten about, and that's how this thing works. We call these theodicies, explaining how this goes on. And the first one I'm going to go to is the one that pretty much everyone goes to first, is the free will, human free will. Now, God wants us to have free will, and that's extremely important, because otherwise we're just programmed robots. God's purpose for us is that He created, however you want to put it, if you want to call it friends, if you want to call it family, if you want to call it co-workers. Not equals, we could never be equals, but He kind of wants us to be equal in as much as we can be. And this is why He manifested as Jesus and came down to be one of us, because He wants to be among us. He wants to be with us, and He can't help being infinitely more powerful and knowledgeable and everything. So we've got this free will because He wants to give us the choice of, do we want to be with Him, or do we not want to be with Him? Because He doesn't want to just create a bunch of people who, like mindless slaves, mindless whatever. Just like He wants us to be able to choose that for ourselves, and that's important. So we can choose to go with or go without. And if we choose the evil, if we choose the wrong, then there are consequences that play out because of that. And that's as simple as that. Now, some people might say, like, oh, well, why does He prefer the free will of evil people than the free will of, like, their victims? Surely those people who are willing to not be hurt by other people, why doesn't their will come true? And I think that's just a fundamental misunderstanding of what free will is. Because we've got the freedom of choice within our capabilities. So like I could will as much as I want to be able to jump over a skyscraper, but my body's not built for that. Doesn't matter how much will I put in. Doesn't even matter how much, like, I go to the gym or whatever. It's just not going to happen. So our free will is obviously connected to capabilities, and again logical possibilities, and so on. So this idea of whose will wins just doesn't fly. And yeah, if you've got this idea, like people choosing evil, so someone wants to harm someone else, they pull out a weapon and go for someone else, and then God throws up a magical shield to protect the other person. Nobody learns anything. It kind of takes away the weight of that thing. That thing doesn't become evil anymore because it doesn't do any harm. If nobody's getting hurt by people like attacking or whatever else, then there's no consequences. It's not evil. It's not. We probably wouldn't even have the concept of harm if every time someone tried to do harm, nothing happened. It would kind of just be like when we play video games, we can all shoot each other and jump on each other's heads and all that, and it's just like, it's a game and we're just having a laugh. No harm done. We all enjoyed it, and we all went home, and we're all still friends. And that would be like real life all the time. But we're starting those things in real life. We do real harm. That's real evil. It's a totally different thing. It's a totally different attitude, because we can still be good people and play these video games and kind of offload and be like, yeah, that's all meaningless, it's just a game, versus real life with real things happening. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. You can't have a free will choice where people learn about the difference between right and wrong if wrong doesn't have consequences. So yeah, it doesn't make sense. Then maybe some people then go to natural evils like earthquakes or tsunamis or storms or whatever, and they do a lot of damage and do harm. But you can't really call an earthquake evil, because an earthquake is part of the it's the planet, it's the tectonic plates of the planet moving around, and that causes us to have, the fuels, and it's a vital function of the planet's existence. It's not something evil, it's something necessary. And people build a town on a fault line, it's going to get damaged. So we should just avoid building on places where they're going to happen. If you move to a place where there are earthquakes all the time, maybe move away. Which brings me to the next point, is that a lot of this natural evil stuff is actually related to free will. So it might have sounded a bit kind of like oversimplistic for me to say, like, don't build a town on a fault line, like as if that's somebody's fault. But sometimes it is somebody's fault. It's maybe not the fault of the people that built it, but there are might be systems in place where they've been forced to live there. They've been forced to build there. They didn't have any choice to build there because some corrupt government, the way they do things, it's like, well, you're going to live in that poor area, It's our human free will that's caused a worldwide society of people who have and people that have not. We've probably got enough resources on the planet to solve world hunger, but the people who are in charge and able to do that and carry it out and make it happen, they're not doing it, and that's their choice, and that's a real problem. People day to day, we're getting the adverts on the TV, like, if you can just give £2 a month, we can feed these people. So like your person on the street might be doing that, but the people that have really got the power to make some real change, why, are they doing enough? Are they doing enough? Because they could probably solve it. And that's a free will thing. That's it's like, the tribalism of them versus us. We'll look after our own, we're not going to look after the other. There's all sorts of factors coming into it there. And there's a lot of free will involved in what is perceptibly natural evil. And then we come to another side of natural evil, where it could be things like, again, another classic example that comes up all the time. I'm just going to use the classic examples rather than try to come up with anything novel at this stage, because I'm just trying to, let's not overcomplicate things. This picture of a deer who is in the forest, a tree's fallen down, it's landed on the deer is stuck under the tree, it's got a broken leg, and the forest is on fire. So it's scared, it's alone, and it doesn't know what it's doing, it's just going to die in pain and agony and fear and confusion. And that's just horrible. And it is horrible. But again, that's one way around. I mean, one way people think of that is that maybe animals don't have the same kind of capacity for conscious thought that humans do. So a human in that situation is really gonna feel all those things. An animal might be more kind of instinctive, like that they won't have that full conscious awareness of the danger, and the fear is more like just the fight or flight instincts, and there's not actually a real, it's a different kind of level of intelligence to them. I mean, that's a possibility. I think there's stuff that's still being studied about how much animals really understand, and I think it's probably different between different kinds of animals. I mean, I certainly see certain levels of intelligence with cats, and I do think they've got the same kind of intelligence that a 2-year-old child might have. If they had vocal cords, they could probably speak to us in English, and understand. There is understanding. So I wouldn't completely say that like all animals are just like flesh robots that work on programming, but it's possible that some are, and it's kind of hard to tell which ones are and which ones aren't unless you do full studies. But I'm just putting that out as a possibility. But yeah, this other thing of one person's pain doesn't necessarily have to be. It's not like a system of karma where if you do good, you get good. If you do bad, you get bad. It could be the good things you do will be rewarding for other people, or the bad things you do will have. It just doesn't work like that. It's not necessarily your rewards for your deeds. Because this idea of soul building, the soul building theodicy, where evil in the world, suffering that happens to you, you usually come out the other side of it having learned some kind of lesson. And we've all got experiences of that, where something's bad has happened, we've been through something, and at the end of it we feel like, yeah, mentally and emotionally I'm a stronger person now, and I've learned from it, and I've learned certain qualities from that. I've learned how to be better from that, and so we do get that on a personal level, but it doesn't mean that every single time something bad happens, it means we're going to get a bonus perk at the end of it. We're not going to level up every time. Sometimes the bad things that happen to us will be benefits to other people's soul building. So maybe the deer in the forest is a prompt to all of us that we should care more about wildlife, we should care more about forest fires, we should care more about our environment, and prompt us to be more active about doing things about it. So there's a certain butterfly effect involved, a domino effect. So maybe that deer may have had that horrible death that it didn't deserve, but there's nothing in Christianity that says people will always get what they deserve in life. The sorting all that out, people getting what they deserve, comes in the afterlife. That's later, not in this earthly life, which as Paul talks about in his letters, this life is just a little, all the suffering in this life will be nothing compared to the glory that we'll experience afterwards. And whatever we've been through now will, like, he was flogged, he was beaten, he was executed, and it's all for, none of that mattered compared to how great it will be later. So that's part of it too. But yeah, so there's also this idea of God is the being that sustains the existence of the universe. And so there's that song, like, he's got the whole world in his hands. So I do like to actually picture it like he's got the whole universe or the whole world, he's holding it. And if he was like fully protecting it, he'd be holding it really tight, and there'd be nothing bad could ever happen, because he's all good, he's all love, he is love, all goodness embodied. So there's no way anything bad can happen. He's holding it really tight, but because of free will, he has to give us this kind of, he gives us this choice. Do we want his love? Do we want his companionship? Or do we want to go our own way? So he has to show us what the alternative looks like, so we can have an informed opinion about it. So maybe he loosens his grip a bit, and maybe some gaps come in, and some darkness trickles in. And so that's what we see. So we can see the difference between good and evil, and light and dark, because that's the thing. That's an important point. There aren't two existing things. There isn't good and evil are two things in conflict fighting. There's God, who is goodness, and evil is a privation of that. There's the word privation, best explained with like light. Darkness is a privation of light. It's the absence of light. If there's light in a room, you can see, you can, it's bright. But when there's no light, it isn't replaced by an existing thing called darkness. It's just, darkness is like 0% light is in the room. It's the absence. Darkness is the absence of light, and that's kind of how evil is as well. It's evil is the absence of good. So fully goodness will be this tightness. Like, yep, we got you. We've got to show you some evil. So I'm just gonna let some gaps come in, just a little bit, okay. You don't, and I've got to show you that because I'm trying to give you this informed choice. I'll show you that clearly you don't want that, so like, don't go that way, and then the Bible is always about him calling out, saying, choose light, choose life, don't choose death. You can see what it looks like, it's bad for you, don't do it. And he's like pleading. So it's all in there, it's all in the Bible. This idea of our choice between good and evil, we need to understand evil so we can reject it or embrace it. God keeps telling us he doesn't want us to do that. He wants us to, and this is like, when he says worship me and all that, it's like, this is another thing. Our modern idea of what is worship is like, get down on one knee or both knees and flat on your face and be like, I'm not worthy. But it's not that, because that everyone worships something. Everything. A worship is about what have you chosen to be like your driving force, your goal. So for some people, a lot of people worship money, and obviously they don't get flat on their face and in front of a pile of money, but they spend their whole life trying to get it. So if you're spending your whole life trying to get it and get more of it, that's worship. So that's what God is talking about when he says worship me, because he is the embodiment of goodness, and he's saying what you should be doing is trying all your life to be good, to be a better person. And that's what that means. That's what he's saying there. He's not saying like, oh, I want you to keep praising me. I mean, I want you to keep saying, look at me and how great I am. I want you to be boosting my ego every single day. That's not who he's talking about. But that's kind of how we understand worship nowadays, what we think the word worship means. But yeah, anyway, let's mention the book of Job earlier, and the book of Job does cover all these ideas. All these ideas are in the Bible. God explains that he knows everything about everything, and he has a plan. A human mind couldn't possibly comprehend the intricacy of this plan for the world. So that's kind of like the butterfly effect, the domino effect of things that can go on. He invites Job to try and come up with a better plan of how to deal with wicked people, because Job's like, bad people are bad, why aren't they being punished? And God says, well, let's try it your way. If we tried it your way, if every bad deed was punished, it would probably end up with every last human on the world dead. That's not my goal. My goal is to get everyone to heaven. And then he uses the Hebrew imagery of the behemoth and the leviathan, and these monsters, they're metaphors for the earth and the sea. And these are things that only God can tame. Humans have to live alongside them and respect them, but if you get too close, you can get hurt. And that's kind of your own fault for playing with fire. So yeah, it's all in the Bible. So there is no contradiction. It gets explanations. It gets examples. Lots of the heroes of the Bible go through tough times, and So like I've said, Jesus, I've said Job, Moses. Moses doesn't get to go to the promised land. He's stuck in the desert for 40 years because of other people who messed up. There's just so many examples of people suffering because of other people, even though they're good people. So the idea, like, there's a contradiction here. No, it's built in. It's built in. And finally, coming back to on the topic of Job, the idea that God didn't do anything, Satan did it all. People might say, but God gave him permission, so that kind of makes it his fault. Or that does make it his fault, which also, no, not really. Satan didn't have to do anything. He had the choice to do the things. He had permission, but he still didn't have to do it. And that's kind of where we are. We've got God's permission to do evil things, but it's still our choice to do the evil things. We don't have to. We've got this freedom of will to do it, and then the consequences play out. But then some people say, like, well, yeah, all the evil in the world, even if it is by free will, he did create us, so every bad thing we do is his fault because he made us this way. And he knew that we were going to do it because he's all-knowing. Like, well, at that point I might ask someone, do you have children? And obviously they don't always say yes, but they might say yes, and like, okay, is everything they do your fault? And they'll say no. Like, well, how is it not? By what you just said, you had a child, you brought them into this world, you know how this world works. Not a single person comes into this world and is perfectly good all the time. Everyone does bad things, everyone hurts other people, everyone gets hurt, and you brought your child into this world knowing that they were going to get their heart broken by somebody, they were going to burn their hand on a hot stove, how dare you bring your child into this world when you know there's a chance they might fall out of a tree and break their leg? How dare you? It's just, and it's not the parents' fault. Clearly what's really going on is they want to bring a child into this world so that they can grow their family and they can love that person and they can look after them as best they can in the system and give them love and teach them things. People get criticized for like being overbearing and overprotective of their kids, and because then you get these like sheltered people that don't understand anything, and they've lived in a safe little bubble, but they're like, they don't know enough about anything. So that's not what that's not the type of parenting God wants. God wants to tell you, don't touch the oven when it's on, don't do that, it's hot, it'll hurt you, and then kids go and do it anyway, and like, well, I told you not to do it, I did tell you, I gave you all the warnings, I explained why it was wrong and it was going to hurt you, and you went and did it anyway, that's on you. So yeah, there's none of this works. So the final before I wrap up, point that is sometimes made is God can make free will creatures without pain, without stuff, because look at heaven. Heaven is this place where everyone's happy all the time and people are supposed to have free will, and it's all wonderful. So why don't you just create that instead of this, where we are now? What's this? This. So if this exists, then it's nonsense. And again, that's all sorts of misunderstandings about what the Bible teaches, because the Bible teaches that heaven doesn't actually exist yet. If there is something that exists now, it would be some sort of what we'd call an intermediary state, and my current understanding, which it's not a hill I'll die on, although because I think this is one of those things like, okay, it could be this, I'm leaning this way, it could be something else, is that when you die, you go into a state of kind of soul sleep. So, because I think the Bible teaches that your spirit and your body need to be together for you to have consciousness. So when you die, the spirit and the body are separated. The body, obviously physical, goes into the ground, circle of life kind of thing, and the spirit will go somewhere else. But obviously the general understanding of heaven is like, okay, your spirit flies away with a little harp, with little wings, and flies up and sits on a cloud with God for a bit, and sees everyone straight away. And I think that's Bugs Bunny cartoons. I don't think that's what is real. I think the soul, the spirit, needs the body for its consciousness. So I think the spirit goes into some kind of storage where it's asleep. I think there are alternative views that are similar, whereas the spirit is separate and it's not asleep as such. I think it might experience the joy of heaven to the extent a spirit can without a body, but then it's also not like quite as free as it would be with a body. But anyway, I'm getting off topic anyway. So the point is, heaven, as we understand it as like the final reward, doesn't exist yet, because in the book of Revelation it teaches God's going to renew the planet Earth and turn the planet Earth into like the way it should have been in Eden. So heaven will ultimately be the earth renewed into a paradise, all of our bodies renewed into perfect bodies that don't get sick, that don't age, that don't die. All of our temptation and compulsion to sin will be taken away from us, but that'll be our choice. We will be saying like, yes, I want to be a good person, so please God, take these desires away from me so I can be the best version of me. And then the people that don't want that, but the people say like, no, I want to be me without, I'm happy as I am with the dark side and everything. God's going to respect that. And obviously there are varying views about what happens to those people, so I won't go into that. But so the people that want it will be on this paradise earth, and the people that don't want it will be eternally separated from God, who will be fully present on the paradise earth. So that's something that's going to happen in the future. Heaven doesn't exist now, and the reason I've explained that is because I very much think we can't have a heaven that's full of perfectly good people with free will, because, well, we can't have it yet. We have to have this stage to get that. Yes, God knows how to create the perfect heaven, and this stage is the process. He has to give us the free will to choose to go to heaven. He has to give us the opportunity to soul build so we can make this personal attempt to become better people, so we can understand, yes, I want to be a better person. I can't get there 100% myself. I'm going to do as best as I can, but God, can you bridge the gap? Can you do that for me? And that's all part of it. So yeah, the idea that God could click his fingers and you've got a free will paradise with perfectly good people, that's another square circle, because the people in that heaven didn't choose to be there, and they've been programmed without any knowledge or understanding of the dark side. They haven't experienced it. Maybe they've been told about it, what it's like, but then that's the Garden of Eden. That's God telling Adam and Eve, don't touch the tree, because you'll get the knowledge of good and evil. And when the Bible uses knowledge, it means experience. It's talking about experience, not just here's the facts. It's so when they did that, now they experience life and death, and they experience evil, and you get a much richer understanding of things if you experience it rather than just go through the textbook. That's what this is all about. This time on earth is about the experience, getting the understanding, getting the soul building, all of that, so that when it comes to Judgment Day, whatever you want to call it, we've got the informed, free choice. Which way do we want to go? What do we want? And then, at that point, everything can be cleansed and perfected and made into the perfect paradise heaven. So, I believe that's everything I wanted to say. Because there's a lot to it. Basically, there's a lot of reasons why this argument just doesn't fly. Whether or not you want to apply it to my definition of atheism or my definition of agnostic non-theism, either way, it doesn't work. And this is why it just doesn't get used in academia anymore. It's just long, like I say, the answers are in the Bible. Go read your Bible, go read the book of Job, go read the Gospels, and it's all in there. So there we go. Thank you for listening, and I hope to see you in the next one. Amen.